So hello, everyone. My name is Lee Nichols, and I'm the editor-in-chief and associate publisher of hydrocarbon processing and gas processing and LNG publications. And I'd like to welcome all of you to another installment of Hydrocarbon Processing's podcast series, The Main Column. Today, we have a very special guest joining us today. It's Ron Beck, who is the marketing and strategy director for Aspen Technology. Today, we're going to be discussing the HPI's digital transformation, the self-optimizing plant, and where the industry is heading down in this digital journey. Now, before we do get started, I do want to let you know that you can subscribe to the Main Column podcast by clicking on the subscribe button or by using your smartphone by saying, "Hey, Google, Alexa, or Siri, subscribe me to the Main Column podcast." So with that, I would like to welcome in Ron Beck. Ron, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on the podcast, Lee.
Oh, absolutely. Excellent. So first, of course, we really appreciate your time today and for providing some insights on the industry's digital journey. So let's go ahead and jump right in. Okay, so the challenges for refining and petrochemicals, of course, continues, especially with the fallout from the COVID-19 pandemic and then, of course, all of the oil demand shifts. So I'm kind of curious, what do you see as the best ways technology can help in this front?
Sure. So that's a good opening question, Lee. Definitely, as everybody knows, the industry has been going through a lot the last 5 months, and it's in a bunch of different directions. But I think mainly what it's done is it's accelerated companies and executives thinking about what's happening in the industry. It's made everybody think now instead of a few years from now about what's going to happen with the energy transition, what's going to happen as older expert employees retire, and also with the uncertainty in supply and demand and the global supply chains. It's really a matter of economic survival for a lot of companies in the industry. So technology is what a lot of executives are turning to as a solution. And really, with what the last downturn, I think companies trimmed costs in all the conventional ways. And now they're seeing this time around, really, it's a matter of technology really offers the only real way to change the business to make it more agile and also cut costs.
And of course, that's a great segue into my next question, which, of course, Aspen Tech just unveiled its vision and strategy for the self-optimizing plant. So, in just a few words, can you kind of explain to the audience what that is, and then, of course, why is it important?
Yeah, so I think Aspen Tech about a year ago, maybe a little longer, we looked at two or three key things happening in the industry. The first is some information presented by several of the major global strategy groups, really ranking the process industries in general and energy in particular as quite far behind the curve compared to other industries in adoption of digitalization, AI, and related technologies. And the other thing is that there is a lot of opportunity there, very fast technology development. So we realized we needed to develop a vision because everybody wanted to change, but nobody really had a vision. And so there's two ways you can go when you innovate technology in an established company like Aspen Tech, who's really an industry leader across the board in all our solution areas. Um, One is sort of incremental development where you come up with new ideas every 6 months or a year. But the other is to set a future target. So we realized it was really time to set a future target because, like I said, customers want to go somewhere, but in terms of more automation, more adoption of AI, but there really wasn't a vision. So we took together a small group of people in the company led by our CEO and talked to a lot of customers and created a future vision and then tested it. And now we've announced it a few weeks ago to the public and gotten a really great response so far. But we've really mobilized our whole company. It's a way to energize our entire company around future innovation towards a goal that will change the industry.
And so, yeah, I'm glad you mentioned AI because I've heard industrial AI and general AI. So I'm kind of curious, what does industrial AI mean, and then how is that different than just say general artificial intelligence?
Yeah. So Yeah, that's a good leading question, Lee, because you know, coming off of what I just mentioned about the self-optimizing plant, I didn't really define what it is. But fundamentally, companies realize that with advanced technologies, AI and things, you can start taking people out of dangerous places and out of the plant. And certainly in commercial settings and insurance, banking, uh, commerce, AI has been big. But in industry, people have been very hesitant about AI because of the risk of explosions, accidents, incidents in the plant, really everything about asset safety and integrity. So, what industrial AI does is it takes the knowledge of the industry, the industrial part, the domain expertise, and then it takes the AI part and puts them together in a way that will make the technology very easily adoptable by an industry like the process industry. So industrial AI is the merger of domain expertise and advanced analytics and AI, and the embedding of that AI within industry specific solutions so that normal workers in that industry can adopt them without having to be fancy data scientists.
So yeah, I want to go back to something you said at the very beginning of our discussion, and that was on how technology is helping during this time of uncertainty. So I want to talk more in depth about planning. So why is planning so important when it comes to times like these, especially within our industry?
Yeah, so planning is really important because it's what happens in a refinery or petrochemical plant on a monthly and quarterly basis to really set the economic goals for the plant. And so the planners, rightly so, view themselves as crucial in the profitability of an enterprise, and oftentimes are accountable pretty closely to the overall plant manager and even the CEO. But traditionally, there's been an problem for years. It's sort of known as the difference between the plan and the actual. And so you set a plan and then you never achieve it. And if you miss by a lot, it's the difference between making money that month or losing money that month. And now you add on to that huge uncertainties and shifts in demand and supply and prices and costs and different things you want to do in your plant. And the traders are saying, we have an opportunity to buy a really cheap shipment of crude. Should I buy it today? And the planners have to make very fast decisions. So this is right at the crux of uh, the area where technology needs to be introduced the fastest in order to really maximize the economics in this changeable time to increase agility and resilience of a plant. So this has been the first area, and we actually just introduced Lee about a week ago. Something we called Aspen Unified, which ties together the planning with the other operations functions in the plant, the scheduling and the actual optimization and control, so that to start bringing that plan very close to the reality and to allow the plan to react very quickly to changing both the changing conditions in the plant and the external conditions. But it's absolutely crucial. If planning is flexible, then the enterprise is flexible, and technology is really critical there.
Absolutely. Okay, so I want to switch a little bit. I want to switch focus now of course, a topic that's been pretty crucial in the industry over the last few years, and of course, that's talent changes in the energy field, especially in this area of, say, knowledge transfer. So I'm kind of curious. Are you seeing that in discussions you're having with your customers? And if so, what are some of the potential solutions? And I would imagine, of course, that technology could be a game changer here. Is that correct?
Yeah. So yes. So the challenge is huge. Maybe some of the readers saw just a few weeks ago a really interesting article in the Wall Street Journal that looked into that. And the upshot of that article was um, the author was arguing that recent graduates weren't being attracted to join the energy field just at a time when people were needed because of you know experienced people retiring. So how do you change that? So I mean, I think going back a few years, the energy industry was actually viewed as a pretty exciting field to go into. The jobs paid well, but more than that, it was sort of viewed as exciting technology. You get into, whether it's upstream or downstream or chemicals, you're dealing with complex technology, you're solving exciting problems. And I think today, partly because of what I mentioned at the beginning, the industry is seen as a laggard in terms of adoption of technology. So if you're a smart young, knowledge worker, you don't necessarily pick energy as your first choice. Um, and then the other part is everybody coming into the workforce now is a digital native. So the traditional software solutions that are used every day, and you can't separate software technology from any job today. It's part of every job. So if those technologies look old or they're hard to use, it it sort of leaves a potential new employee a little bit cold. So first of all, so the intuitive nature, the advanced nature, the introduction of things like artificial intelligence, concepts like being able to run parts of a plant autonomously, or having what we call the self-optimizing plant, um, becomes a really key factor in terms of attracting these new people. But also, it's about cutting down the training time. So, lots of studies say take 6 or 7 years for a new worker in the energy field to really become highly productive, um, because of the specialized nature of the jobs and the equipment and the processes. So, definitely AI, we're seeing lots of ways where we can use that, to cut down the time required to really understand the tools people are using, so the workers understand the tools and are presented with the information to make more intelligent strategic decisions, way before they've had 5 or 10 years of experience through these sort of so-called technology assists. But there's more to it than that. There's fundamental changes in the way people learn. Like you said, knowledge transfer. You know, if you get a new something in the store, a tool, or let's say you buy a chainsaw, or a new car, or whatever it is. If you're a digital native person, you're much more likely to just go online and look at a YouTube video than read a manual or take a course, right? So, um, there's a whole new way of gaining knowledge, and fields, industries like the energy industry need to adopt that, and so one of the things, for example, in the pandemic, we had just started a brand new program with electronic certification, of our software products for people to be able to become certified at different levels of proficiency in these sophisticated tools using, online learning. We decided right away when the pandemic started, our CEO decided we would give away, instead of charging for the certification, we would give it away for an extended period of time. And we had several thousand people, step up and certify themselves as planners. We were talking about schedulers, APC engineers, proficiency with our engineering modeling tools, and so forth. So I think it's a game changer. Technology is totally crucial here. I mean, all you have to do is look at, what's been happening with distance learning in schools, right? Anybody who has kids, some teachers have figured out how do we use technology to engage the kids when they're from home, and others haven't. And some school systems have, and some school systems haven't. And that's the difference between places where the parents are all frustrated with where they're happier, with this new environment. And it's the same thing with companies. If a company gets behind this and figures out how to make this work for their employees and get them engaged and excited, they're the companies that are going to thrive in this environment. They're going to get the new employees. The employees are going to be motivated and more proficient. And we, as a supplier, have a huge part in that to provide the advanced ways of learning. And we have put in place groups of people, you know, introducing stuff, doing research on it. How do we better help with knowledge transfer?
No, that's absolutely true, especially when you see how early kids get a hold of technology in their hands. I mean, you see, 2-year-olds playing with an iPhone, and they know how to operate it. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I do want to go to another challenge too, and of course, that's on sustainability, more specifically on decarbonization. So, of course, this has been a major driver for corporate change in places like Europe. I know we've heard of companies like Total and BP and Shell. They're planning to move their companies towards carbon neutrality. So, here in the U.S., of course, the optics are a little bit different. So, I kind of want to get your opinion on what are you seeing both in the U.S. and globally on this topic. And then, of course, I'm guessing technology can probably play a huge role here. I'm guessing, correct?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very complicated problem for a company. And yes, in Europe and Asia too, in Asia, interesting, is extremely aggressive on this because, they're highly dependent on tourism. And so the idea of a circular economy and getting rid of plastic waste is huge in Asia and affects the chemical industry. But yeah, so yeah, the strategies have been different in the US and in Europe and Asia. So in Europe and Asia, we've been working with companies to put in place sophisticated digital twin dashboards that let them track carbon emissions and things like that. But fundamentally in Europe, like you said, the companies have pledged to move quickly. And this has really been, their strategies have in large part really been about changing their businesses. So changing where they're investing their large amounts of capital to, let's say, buy into, renewable energy or other sectors that give them a broader energy portfolio beyond just oil and gas. Whereas I think in the US, you know, Texas and Colorado and so forth, people are more doubling down on how do we maximize our economics from oil and gas, because that's more the style in the U.S. right now. But I think here um, it's a more challenging problem actually, because if you're just going to change your carbon footprint by buying new businesses, that's in a way easier. But if you're going to do it by figuring out how do we improve our company, so just take one simple example and let's say just stick with Texas. So okay, yes, Texas is a highly pro energy part of the world, and in fact, the economy is highly dependent on it. The Permian and other places are great resources to develop, but all at the same time, Texas is a huge outdoor place. People love hunting and fishing. There are huge ranches. So water is an interesting issue in Texas because water is crucial for things like fracking or an enhanced recovery and all oil and gas production. But at the same time, the same people who are making the energy industry go want clean water resources for the health of Texas, right? So I think things like water flaring and things like that become a nexus in the United States. And technology can be huge here. And this is where you can use technology, a lot of because it's a complex optimization problem. How do I make the most money off of my resources or out of my refinery, but at the same time have very positive results in optics in the environment, for the society in terms of what I'm doing with, let's say, Texas's water, or how am I reducing flaring in North Dakota, or other things like that. And here where, this is where things like digital twin technologies, ability to show the public and to show investors that you are in fact making a lot of progress and you understand how to run things in a clean way are important.
Excellent. Well, I only have one more for you, and of course, I need you to put on. I need you to take out the crystal ball and tell. So, what do you see? What's next on the horizon in the industry? So, what? And I guess other things are what other exciting areas is Aspen Tech working on today, and then of course into the future.
Okay, so Lee, we touched a couple of times here on AI and things like that, and I'm pretty sure you have had and will have other guests talking about AI on your blogs in the future. But I want to emphasize one point. We don't see this, and we're heavily involved in innovating in the AI and machine learning area. We don't see this meaning that people come out of the equation. It's just that the nature of jobs are going to change. So everybody listening to this podcast who works in the industry, for example, I think the call to action there is to think about making yourself adaptable and to re-educating yourself continuously because the nature of the jobs are going to change. They're going to be more interesting, but they're going to be different. So instead of just being, let's say, an operator who sits there and operates a section of a refinery, you're going to be more of a strategic worker looking at what the data is telling you the plant is doing to react to different situations and looking at more strategic choices that the company can and should be making within that asset or across assets to make money. Maybe so that's one way things are going to change. But I go back to the vision I talked about the self-optimizing plant. So for us, one of the exciting things about this vision is it gives us a lot of things to do in the next few years. And we believe it allows us to innovate even more fast because we know where we're going. We have a vision. We want to give companies the intelligent tools to run intelligent plants that get the most out of those plants in the safest way possible with the use of technology. So I think there's a huge number of exciting things that are kind of come out there. And, Aspen Tech has always been known as a company with discipline and execution. That's why the industry trusts us. And what the self-optimizing plant does is it gives us a whole innovation focus to both innovate rapidly, but do it with discipline and execution. So I don't see us deviating a lot from this, self-optimizing plant vision. It's a vision for the next 5 to 10 years for us to develop against. But you'll see, even within 3 to 4 weeks of this podcast coming out, Lee, um, we're going to be introducing into the market a really important, exciting new technology called hybrid modeling, which is going to be a huge practical set of technologies that demonstrate this industrial AI I've been talking about. So I think it's going to take the industry 1 to 2 to 3 years to really understand how important and exciting this is and how to really use it to make money and to innovate and to change their plants. But I think that's for us the exciting thing coming in the next few years.
Excellent. Well, yeah, we definitely can't wait to hear more about that, of course, when y'all unveil it. So definitely keep us in the loop on that one. Well, that's pretty much the time we have today. Today, Ron, again, we really want to thank you for your time today, especially on giving us some of your expertise on digital technologies and the HPI, and of course how Aspen Tech is optimizing operations. So we really sincerely appreciate your time. Um, Lastly, of course, we really want to thank all of you for listening to another installment of Hydrocarbon Processing Podcast, The Main Column.